Okay, so let me ask the question again, right? The question is that you've been given the code from line 9 to line 19. This code from line 9 to line 18, right? And you are to apply display flex on any of the elements. Like you should apply flexbox on any of the elements that you want, such that it would affect only this main, but it will not affect this div. Like it will not affect these divs. It can affect this main, maybe it can affect any other element between line 9 and line 18, but it will not affect these divs here, any of them. So what do we do? Yes, we should class it inside where? I should put a class selector in the main. No, that's not correct. Mm-hmm. Put the display flex in the body. Put the display flex in the body, right? When you put the display flex in the body, why will it affect only the main, but it will not affect the divs, all these divs inside the main? Shielding it. Okay. Uh no, I need a better explanation. This explanation is too Marvel superhero. Like David, the main actually is not that it contains. Thank you. It's not that it contains these divs as it's, of course the divs here are the children elements, right, of the main, right? But the reason why, if you apply display flex to the body, it will only affect the main but not the divs inside it, is because display flex only works for the parent element and the direct children of that element. Are you getting what I'm saying? It doesn't work on the grandchildren, so to speak, right? It only works on the parent element. That's the place you put the display flex, and then the direct children. So if I put the display flex here in main, what that means that is that this main now is the parent element. And what are the direct children of this main? All these divs, right? So it will affect all the divs. But if I put the display flex in body, it will affect the parent element here now is body, which means the direct children of body are what? Just main. The div inside, it will not affect it, it will only affect the main. In that case, this one, the place you're putting the display flex in is called the flex container. It's called the what? And then the place that you're putting the, that's the parents, the children of that flex container is what you will know call flex items. Okay, so let's say the in this our code here now, the display flex is in main. We have display flex in main, which means main here is the what? The display flex is in main, which means main here is the what? Are you people like doubting your answers or what? The display here is in main because that means that main is what? The flex container. And then these divs are what? The flex items. Is that clear? And of course, the output of this code, when we go live, we'll see that the output of this code is like this. I mean, based on what we've written so far. Can anybody tell me why these boxes look like they are on the same vertical line, even though they are not the same height? Why is it happening like this? Divine, why is this thing doing like this? Why is it having all this code on the same vertical axis like this, right? Even though they have different height. What's it doing? Charles, look at what I'm saying. These elements now, all of them are not the same height. Okay? All of them are not the same height. But all of them are still on the same. Wait, let me just arrange the text inside so that it will look much better. So we have height of this, height of this. Which of the divs? I think I'll still put a display flex in it. Okay. So why is it that even though these boxes are not the same size, why is it that all of them are aligned on the same horizontal axis? Like they are aligned like that. The display flex we did is what made it to arrange itself in a line, right? But there's another different reason why it is, even though it is different sizes at the same, it's on the same axis. Align items, right? Align items what? Align item center. Okay, so this align item center now, which of the lines, because there are two align item center in this code. Okay, yeah? There's one on line 9 and then there's also one on line 20. So which of the align item center is responsible for making these boxes to stay on the same line? The boxes themselves, not the code inside. Is it the one on line 9 or the one on line 20? Line 9, right? So this one, right? So because this main element has display flex, every div here is going to be on the same line. And then even though they are of different heights, if you put align item center, all of them will come to the vertical center. All right. Why is it that in this code base, the div here is starting from 1 and ending at 6, but outside here it is starting from 6 and ending at 1? What's happening? Flex direction, row reverse. If I write align items without putting center, when you write align items here means that you are referring to the property of this HTML element. Do you know what a property is? When you say something is a property of something, what that means is that that thing is associated with this other thing, right? Good. So when you say this align items now is a property of the element that you are referring to, what that means is that this is one of the attributes, like one of the things that you can modify about this element, right? And what kind of value you want to give to it. So the question now becomes, what kind of value do you want to give to it, and what the value you want to give to it is center, right? So you cannot just write it like that without giving it a value. Okay. Okay. Yes, so I was saying that here in the code base it starts with 1 and ends with 6, but here it's starting with 6 and ending with 1. Which line of code is responsible for that? Line what? Line 6. Very good. Line 6, flex direction, row reverse. So how can we make it to change back? How can we make it to change back from 6 to 1 to this? Flex direction what? Row. But now it's on the other side. So what's happening? Flex what? Where is it? Justify content, line 7, flex end. So how do we make it to come to the beginning here? Flex start, make it to come to this side, right? However, if these ones now are the default values of the HTML element that has that display flex, right? So because these are the default values, sometimes you don't even need to put it in. Are you understanding? It will still work regardless if you don't put it in. But if you need to modify it, that's when you will now mention the property and then give it the new value you want to give it. Like for example, now these align items, its default value is going to be what? The align items for the default value for align items is going to be what? It's going to be what? Let's start, right? Good, good. Let's see now. Yeah, so the align items, let's start to work, right? But since we don't want it to do like that, we want it to come vertical center, we're going to do align items center. Okay, so this is basically like a recap on what we've done so far with display. We display what? Display flex, right? So let's take a look at display grid today. CSS tricks grid. Please pay attention as I'm teaching this class. I'm also recording it, so I'll probably share the video later with you guys, right? Don't distract me. Don't make me to come and start shouting or quarreling with you guys. Just pay attention. All right, so let's look at CSS grid. When you hear the word grid, what comes to your mind? Like, just give me a real life example of something that when you hear the word grid, you will see it. Chocolate bars, good. Eh? Calculators, yes. Blocks, yes. Chin chin. Peanuts is not grid. Peanuts is just chaos. Yes. Squares, yes. Laptop. What kind of laptop? Like keyboard or laptop? Even what? Can you use rectangles to do grid? You can have rectangles that are like up and down, up and down, up and down, right? Ceiling, okay, yes, ceiling can be a grid, right? So with that now, the question now becomes, how do you define a grid? What's a grid? How do you define a grid? Well, let's see. They said here, CSS grid layout, also known as grid or CSS grid, is a two-dimensional grid-based layout system, right? That when compared to any layout system of the past, completely changes the way we design user interfaces. The key word here for CSS grid is that it is what? Two-dimensional, right? As opposed to flexbox. Flexbox is what? One directional. When you want to set something with flexbox, it's either you're setting it horizontally or you're setting it vertically. You cannot set horizontal and vertical at the same time. Are you following what I'm saying? But with CSS grid, you can actually set horizontal and vertical at the same time. So that's one of the key differences between CSS grid and flexbox. So given that you know this now as the key difference, if you're building a website, which part of the website will most likely need to use CSS flexbox? We've already looked at a very, very common example, right? The header element, right? The header element will most likely need to use flex. But if you're doing something like, let's say, um, let's say you want to do like a section where like you have products, product cards, right? What CSS display this thing will you use? Grid, right? Because grid now will allow you to arrange it both vertically and horizontally. Are you following now? Good. So that's one of the key differences between CSS grid and CSS flexbox. Grid is a two-dimensional layout, right? And it helps us to design user interfaces. So later on, you can go through this content on your own, but we are going to quickly jump into some examples for grid. Just like just like we did with CSS flexbox, eh? Just like we did with CSS flexbox, grid also requires the parent container, that's the parent element, and the child element, right? The parent element is going to be called what? The grid container. And then the child elements are going to be called what? Grid items. Good morning. We don't have it. Yeah. Grid container for the parent elements, grid items for the child elements. So let's go and delete everything that we've done so far about Flexbox. Let's delete everything we have so far about Flexbox, and then let's look at the output of this code. Where is the output? It's supposed to be here. Okay, so we have, okay, wait. Before we do that, let's go back and I think maybe we can. Okay, I think we can leave the one for div. I think we can leave the one for div here. Yes, this is what we have with div. I have a question, guys. Why is it that each of these div is taking the entire width from beginning to end? It's a trick question. I don't think I've talked about it in this class. But is it because I put reset CSS? No, it's not it. It's not because I put reset CSS. Reset CSS does something, right? But that's not the reason why. Because if you look at it, let's see what we did for div. I don't hear what you're saying. You're just making noise in my ear. Just now. Who bring me go to slap? Quiet and listen. If you look here, you see that there's nothing on grid. There's nothing on div. Johnson, there's nothing on div in this CSS reset. Is there? No. So it's not CSS reset that's making it do like that. Is it in the code? I don't think there's anything in the code. Is there anything in this code that is making it do like that? You guys can't see it. Eh? Okay, let's try something. So let's make this one. Let's say instead of div. Eh? Instead of div, let's use span. Let's use span instead of div. What happens? The CSS. Okay, it's still doing like that with span. Yes. Div is a block level element, yes. Right? So normally, if you put it with div, it's supposed to work. But span is not a block level element. Let me show you. Span is not a block level element. So what's happening? Yes. It's from this display flex. That means if you use display flex, it will take it will make this thing to take the width of the entire container, right? The entire container, take the entire width of the container. So keep that in mind when you're using display flex. Anyway, let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of this. Border is 10 pixels, solid purple. Margin bottom. I'll remove this margin bottom. Align item center. Do we even need this? No. Delete it. Okay, this one has height and the other one also has height. But if you are using span, let's change it back to div. How do you switch? No. Okay, pressing Ctrl Z will actually do it. What's going on? Fast, 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 fast. All right. The one Ctrl Z did not work. What they cool. Okay. All right. So yes, so we have this now, right? What the first thing that we are going to do is that, remember, based on what we've talked about with CSS Grid, right? We've said that the parent element is going to be the grid container, right? And then the children of that parent are going to be the what? The grid items. So in this HTML now, which one now is going to be the grid container here? Which one should we make the grid container here? Main, right? Because main is the parent element of these divs, and we want whatever we do to affect all these divs at the same time. So let's go and select the parent element and give it a display of grid, which is exactly what they are showing us here. So when you use display, there are actually two displays of grid you can use. Come on, say. There are actually two displays of grid you can use. You can use the normal grid, right? Which does what? Generates a block level grid, or you use inline grid, which does what? Generates an inline level grid. In the next class, in our next class, we will look at the difference between block level and inline level. Please, somebody should take note of this, right? In our next class, we'll look at the difference between block level and inline level. But for today, for this class, we're just going to look at block level grid. Are you guys following? Good. So let's look at block level grid. Okay, so now we've done display grid, right? Let's go and look at our code. There is still no difference. So did we save it? We saved it now. So what's happening? Why is there no, there's still no difference? We just defined the grid. We have not actually started using it, right? Good. That's one key thing to keep in mind again um about grid. So the next thing now to look at with grid is grid template columns and grid template rows, right? Now, the grid template columns and grid template rows, what do? They define what? The columns and the what? The rows of a grid, right? With a space separated list of values. So the values can be the size of of each of the grids, or it can be the line name. So how does it work? Let's say we have 6 elements here now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, yeah? Good. Now, if we come here and do grid template columns, we can actually define the size of each of the columns. That's each of the 6 columns. Are you following? So let's do that. So the first column now, we are going to say, let's say maybe 35 pixels. Second column, we'll say something like 12 rem. 12 rem is not too much. Is it too much? Let's no, 3 rem looks too small. Let's just keep going with pixels. So 35 pixels. Second one is 50 pixels. Third one is going to be what? Let's go with 45. Okay, 45 pixels. Yeah. Fourth one, let's go with 100 pixels. Fifth one, let's go with um 27 270 pixels. That's the fifth one, right? And then the sixth one, let's go with 120 pixels. And then save. Oh yeah, let's see what we've done. Wow. So you can already see that you are actually using grid to decide how, like, the size of each element. Okay, yeah? Good. Let's reduce this by half. So let me remove this 3 here and see what happens. So what do you think happened here? What do you guys think happened here when we removed 3 values from this? Look at how it looks with those 3 values. This is how it looks with the 3 values, right? And now this is how it looks without those 3 values now. So what do you think happened? You shared the 3 values, right, among the grid items. As you remove one more value, let's remove 100. I seen it. To share it among all the 3 of them. Why is this one small? It's probably because the height, I set the height to 25 pixels. So it's going to pick up the height of 25 pixels. And this last one, I set the height to 65 pixels. So it's picking up the height. If I remove the height for all of them, let's remove the height for all of them so that they will all be the same. And we save the code. You see now that this is what we have, right? So the first, what it's basically saying is that for each of the columns, eh, the first side, that's column 1. This is column 1 now, and this is column 2, right? So the first column is going to be what? 270 pixels. The second column is going to be what? 120 pixels. Now, can you give me a real life example of where you would want to use something like this? A dashboard? Okay, how? Okay, so you can have, like, on your dashboard now, you can have something like this. Let's say you want to do, let me not use dashboard. Let's say I want to do something like um name divine, right? age, um gender. Okay, now I'm not going to explain that. Okay, so this one now I'm going to make it like, normally this is how this thing is, right? Which means this side is bigger than this side. But I want this side, because this side is going to be bearing the values and this side is going to be bearing the prompts. I want this side to be smaller than this side. So what do I do to this grid? What size should I put here? What size should I put here? Eh? I should just swap it. So this will be 120. This will be what? Two what? No, Madi, is actually it was 270 I put here that last time. But why is it not showing this? It's not saved. It's not saved. Let's save it. Okay. So this is working, right? We can actually confirm that this is working. So that's it for grid template what? Columns. You can actually use the length. It can be a length, it can be a percentage, it can be what? A fraction of the free space in the grid using the FRO unit. So many of you have been asking me about this FRO unit, right? If you come to this website, you can actually read more about the FRO unit, right, from DigitalOcean. But the basic idea of the FRO unit, let me just show you. So remember that we put display grid where? On this main. Okay, yeah? Now let's see let me give it a background color of a very light background color. Let's go with aqua, right? Let's go with aqua so that we can see the area that it covers. So see the entire area of, are you seeing the entire area of this grid? Right? This is the entire area of this grid. And then because we specified the width of each of the columns, so we are saying that for the first column of each of the grid, it should have a width of 120 pixels. And then for the second column of each of the grid, it should have a width of 200 and 270 pixels. Good. So if we want to use fractional units, it says what? It gives us what? A fraction of the free space in the grid. So let us use fractional units. Let's say that for each of them, we are going to use a fraction of the free space. So let's use 1 FR, 1 FR, right? Which means it will take one fraction of the free space, and then this other side will take another fraction of this free space. If it is only 2 here, one fraction of this full space will be what? If it's only 2, one fraction of it will be what? Half. Okay, yeah? If you have only 2 columns, and you're saying that those 2 columns should each take a fraction of the available space, right? What that means is that a fraction of the available space is going to be what? Half. Are you following? So let's do that. Let's go and save. And then we look at it and you see that it's actually what? It's actually that half. Very good. So what happens now if I put here as 2 instead of 1? What do you think is going to happen? This side will take 2. That means it is now what? Out of 3 now. Okay, yeah? It is now instead of out of 2, it's now out of 3. So out of 3, the first grid will take 1 out of 3, and then the second column will take what? 2 out of 3. And that's what's happening. Are you seeing? Now, the reason why I'm introducing it like this is because when we are going to be working with grids in this class, we are going to be using a lot of Chris. We are going to be using a lot of fractional units for grid as opposed to using pixels or rem. Are you following? We are going to be using a lot of what? Fractional units. So it is good. It's a good idea to have to know how it works so that you know how to use it. Okay, so that's it for grid template columns, right? You can also use line name. So I don't exactly know what this line name is because they didn't give an example here. Okay, I think maybe they did though. I don't know, sure, but for now we're just going to be using fractional units. And then these are some examples of how you can put your grid template columns. You can have one fractional, you can have min max, you can have repeats. Let us look at this repeat. So here it's saying repeat 51FR. Let's copy it and go and paste here. Repeat 51FR. If we do that repeat 15FR, this is what we have, right? So this is not bad though. It means that it is splitting it into what? Into 5 columns, right? And then each of the columns is 1 FR. Are you following? It's splitting it into 5 columns. Each of the columns is 1 FR. Good. Now, how can we do it in such a way that it will split it into 3 columns? So we use what? 3. Okay? We use 3 instead of 5, and to split it into 3 columns. Okay, but how do we do it so that the first 2 columns, please listen, this is a trick question. The first 2 columns are going to be 1 FR, 1 FR each, but the second column is going to be 2 F, sorry, the third column is going to be 2 FR. Eh? I remove the repeat. Let's see. Let's see. We're removing the repeat work. Save. No, it didn't work. I think we'll put the repeat back. Like you need to put the repeat back. But I'll put this one as 2 for the first 2. And then for the second one, I'll just do this. You see, the first 2 now will have 1 FR, 1 FR, right? And the second one will be this. Now, keep in mind, the only reason why this thing is doing like this is because this, it is splitting it into 4 parts, right? Out of that 4 parts, the other one is going to take 2, right? And then the first 2 is going to take 1 each. So that's what's happening. Okay, so that let's just keep it at that. Let's keep it at that. Whew. Okay, let's go back. So the same thing actually works for columns, for rows. Grid template rows also has the ones that you can set inside it, but mostly based on that 80-20 rule. We've already talked about the 80-20 rule in this class now. Mostly what you're going to be using is going to be grid template columns. Okay? Good, so keep that in mind. All right, so you can actually go through this content much later, but let us look at, and this there's a lot of content on how you should use template columns and template rows. There's also for grid template areas in case you want to set the columns and the rows at the same time. But the other thing that we're going to look at is gap, column gap, row gap, grid column gap, and grid row gap. Now, look at this example. There are 9 elements in this grid. But in this example, they are not showing us the size of these elements. They are showing us the size of the space between the elements. Now, look at this example and look at this code here. This code is targeting the parent container, okay, yeah? Which means that if we wanted to do something like this in our code base, which of them are we going to be targeting? The main, okay, yeah? Good. Now, it says here, grid template columns, 100, 50, and 100. So this is 100, this is 50. I don't understand, but whatever. And then this is 100. And then the second one is showing 80, auto, and 80. But here it's saying column gap, 10 pixels. And then row gap, 15 pixels. So what does that mean? What that means is that if you want to set the space between the elements inside the grid, the items of that grid, right? If you are setting the columns, you will use what? Column gap. And if you are setting the rows, you will use what? Row gap. So let us go and set the column gap and the row gap for our own example here. We are going to set the column gap to be 20 pixels, and then we are going to set the row gap to be 15 pixels. So we'll go with column, okay, yeah? Column gain, column gap, we use what? 20 pixels, and then row gap, we use 10 pixels, right? Is that what we say? 10 pixels. All right. And you can already see this is 20 pixels, this is 10 pixels. If you write gap, it will work. But gap is going to take both column and row gap. Does that make sense? Good. So, and that's actually the thing with this CSS. That's even the same thing with all these other ones of grid. For grid here, you have grid templates that actually takes in grid column, grid row at the same time. Are you following? Good. So we said it's the equivalent of grid template columns, grid template rows, and then grid template areas. Okay. So and this is it here. They said gap is what? A shorthand for row gap and column gap. If you want to set space between it, you can actually use it to set like double value. So this thing that we just did now, we can actually come here and do it kwa. You can say gap 20 pixels, 10 pixels, and it will actually work. It will actually work. To still be like no difference at all, as you can see. But if you give it only one value, then that means that value is going to work for both the columns and the rows. Is that clear? Good. So that's it for gap, as you can see here. Let's make this 10. Save. Okay. Very good. What else? Justify items. Justify items. So let's say that each of the elements, let's go and do something here. I'm going to give these divs, all these divs, I'll give them width, a width of, let's say, 3 rem, width of 3 rem. Let's see what that does to it. Okay, 3 rem is small. Let's go with 10 rem. Okay, so this is 10 rem now, right? You can even see that this is one grid, this is another grid, and then this is the third one. Okay, yeah? That's based on what we did here. If you want to fix this thing to make sure that all of them are the same, what do? I'll delete this 2FR, then I'll put here as what? 3. Save. So you see now that we have one grid, two grid, and three grid, but the elements themselves have their own width. Do you understand? So we can actually use justify items to align the grid items along the row axis, right? The other one, align items, aligns along the what? The column axis. So along the row axis here is what? Is this side. So we align the grid items, and the values that we have for aligning are start, end, center, and stretch. So let's go ahead and use center for now. We're going to do, there's no remote here. We're going to do justify items, okay? Yeah? And then we'll say what? Center. Justify items, center. And just like that, we go to the, actually let's give this, what do we do? Hey, there's no way to color this grid. Wonderful. Anyway, yeah, align item center. Okay, good. So here now, justify item start to take it to the beginning. Justify items end will take it to this other side. Then justify item center will take it here. Justify item stretch will make sure that it stretches along. Let's try that. Justify items stretch. Let's see if it's going to override the width that we set here. It didn't override it. It didn't override it. Okay. So, but at least we know that start and end works. Okay. I don't know. Let's see now. This for end. Okay. There's also align items which aligns to the block like this, and then there's place items. Place items does the same work as justify items and align items, right? It will just bring everything to the vertical and horizontal center. So let me give you an example of that. Let's say that this main has a height. So let's give it a height of, let's say, 100 VH. Or should we go with 80? Let's go with 80. 80 VH. 80 VH. Which means that it covers this whole thing, but this is what we have. Then let's give this a height of, let's make it a box. So let's give a height of 10 rem as well. Height of 10 rem. Okay, so we have this here now. This thing now is justify items end that is moving it here, right? Now, if we put justify items center to move it to the center, and if we do align items center, it will also move it to what? Vertical center. So that's vertical center, horizontal center, right? Good. So, but if we do place items center, it will do exactly the same thing. Are you guys seeing? Good. So that's basically how it works. That's basically how it works. Okay. There's also justify content. It says sometimes the total size of your grid might be less than the size of its grid container. This could happen if all your grid items are sized with non-flexible units like pixels. In this case, you can set the alignment of the grid within the grid container. This property aligns the grid along the inline row axis as opposed to aligning contents. Hmm. Oh, Jim, let's see what they are saying now. Okay, yeah? So height is 100 VH. Let's bring this down to 50. Let's bring it to 50 VH, which means it's now, the grid is now above it. But we want to do it in such a way that it will align. So let's do align content. Okay? Align content center. What does that do? I'm not seeing any visible change to it. Okay, so I've never really used this one. Okay, but see the way it works, right? So you have the grid container here, and then you have this content inside it. So when you do justify content end, it will move everything to the end of the grid container. How does that work? Wait, does this mean I don't still understand how this thing works? Okay, oh, voila. It almost looks like it's the same thing, but it's not really the same thing. That's the problem. Anyway, so that's it for grid. That's it for grid. You can actually go through this content on your own later so that you can understand more about how grid works. But what we looked at today is template columns, right? And then gap, and then placing of items in the grid, right? Any questions so far? Any questions so far? No questions. Okay, so please also come and read this stuff, special units and functions, so that you can have a better idea of how to resize in your grid. But for today's class, let's look at a classwork, everyone. So go and search for CSS, I think it's Grid Garden. Let's see. Yes, cssgridgarden.com. It's a game, yes. Everybody open this, cssgridgarden.com. Go ahead and open it in your own laptop. You will notice that it's almost the same thing as Flexbox. They are the ones that created Flexbox Froggy. And then they also have this Anchorium, which I have not played, but I think it will also be nice. But go ahead and open this Grid Garden. When it loads, you will see something. Yes, code peep. I don't know why it's taking so much time to load. Let me pause this. Pay attention, let's continue. Okay, so Grid Garden. It says, welcome to Grid Garden, where you write CSS code to grow your carrot garden. Water only the areas that have carrots by using the grid column start property. For example, grid column start 3 will water the area starting at the third vertical grid line. Where is the third vertical grid line? Here. This is the first grid line. This is the second grid line. And this is the third vertical grid line. So that means grid column start 3, right? We'll move this water to start from where? This place, right? Good. So what we'll do is grid column start 3. So your goal is to just use grid in a way that will make sure that, yes, the water gets to the carrot. Is that clear? You need that system for this. I don't know why you say there's no system. So also, you will need the insecticide that you're going to use and poison the weeds in the farm as well. So he said, uh-oh, looks like weeds are growing in the corner of your garden. Use grid column start to poison them. Note that the weeds start at the 5th vertical grid line. This is the first vertical grid line, second one, third one, fourth one, fifth vertical grid line, right? So that means we will do what? Grid what? Grid column start 5, right? Good. Okay, everybody open and get to this level 3. Fast, fast. Get to level 3. Fast, fast. Ozugbo, ozugbo. Ewo. Done? No response. Nobody has done. Hey, nobody has finished. Who could even catch it? Repeating what? I beg, it's not because I just repeat. It's because I see the hill. If I did not see that hill, come on. No. Have you guys gotten to level 3? Have you got to level 3? Because this starting is not it's not even working. Not even know what like what's that?